Alright, I decided to leave the Dramamine at home. Can you see the upside down watch? It's 11:25. Do you know where your bagel benders are? Alright, we're going to start here. We're probably going to move the camera. Greetings, campers. You know, I've got a link in here with Gohmert responding to the dismissal. But I saw another thing where he was talking and he had his little bandana on like this, but I figured he's from Texas. It looked good. I liked it. Reminded me of some other people that wear bandanas around their neck. Cowboys, for instance. All right, we have a couple of thoughts that I needed to go over, and I probably should have put the chat on. I think I turned it off because at this range it can work without overly destroying my concentration span. Couple of things. I got to do a shout out to Dean in LA, and this is exciting, and it's like boom, big thumbs up. Dean and Dr. Skinner are driving from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. to make the rally. So they're picking up somebody in Phoenix, and then they're going to change vehicles and head to Washington. So they should be there. What's today? Sunday night. They left a few hours back, and 36 hours. So that's 3/12s. So that'll put it tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening. So it should be Tuesday morning. They should be there, which is great. That'll be a day early. Excellent. This way they won't miss it. And great, good work. So there's your shout out. And howdy, guys. We had a great chat on the phone before. And what was that song? The Zeppelin tune, the Crunge. I was thinking of that. You know, I open a newspaper and what do I see? There's my baby staring at me. Oh, what's that mean? His girlfriend got front page? Robert, these are such confusing stories you tell. Anyway, so that's one thing. That's a good shout out. The bandana's a second point. Now that we've got a bunch of campers here, let's dig in. I saw a scroll this evening on Fox News along the bottom. Two things of noteworthy interest, and then we'll do our happy links. First, I don't know if I can actually change this. I'd like to put the chat on, but I wasn't intending on putting it there. Apologies. But first thing it said was that, and I got to find out where. Maybe you guys can help out. I don't know if the CDC said it, but it said that 80% of the coronavirus cases are non-symptomatic or asymptomatic. 80% of the cases have no symptoms. Now, let's not forget a case is a positive test. So you're testing people with no symptoms. They have no symptoms, but they test positive. So if you have no symptoms, are you sick? No. So if you test positive, who cares? Right? Yeah, I guess I have that, and it's not bothering me, and it doesn't exist. Or that's just one common sense beer and peanuts way of looking at it. Another one might be, let's pull this a little closer so we can be personal, up close and personal. The other argument could be that, gee, maybe those PCR tests are showing an inordinately large number of false positives because they're asymptomatic. You decide. But which idiot should be apprised of this question? Following that line, and we'll come back to it, is the concept of what I've said for many months, an evidentiary hearing. Now, this whole business with the, what shall we judiciously call this? Voter abnormalities in these 6 disputed states. Many lawsuits have been brought. Many have been dismissed. Many have been appealed and dismissed. But what? There's never been a hearing. There's never been an evidentiary hearing, meaning no evidence has been presented. Minimal stuff has been presented to support a motion, to support a complaint, but there has been no full hearing on it. Okay? Why not? There has been no full hearing on the effectiveness of masks. Why not? There has been no full hearing on the effectiveness of this PCR test and its accuracy. Why not? And we can extend that list. But those are three that come to mind. How about another one just popped up? The effectiveness of lockdowns on stopping the spread of this disease. And then what about this business of asymptomatic cases? What about the definition of a case? I mean, that's been brought by Pam Popper. That's like a subcategory A of the first point. The second point that was scrolling on Fox News that I mentioned in my rant the other day, which if you haven't seen, go back 2 episodes. Some people thought that was too, well, we'll say it wasn't cardboard enough. Yeah, imagine that. Let's be cardboard. But we were talking about Krep, the head of is it Krep or Kreb? Is that a real name? Who was the head of CISA, the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, who missed 6 months of intrusions into the Treasury Department and into government networks, among other things. But he has the unmitigated gall to say that the elections were the most secure. Yeah, have lots of proof, it appears, that these machines were connected to the internet, which violates federal law, presumably state law. So how does he possibly declare that? It's beyond me. And he walks off into the sunset. That was by review. The point being, this spin, trolling and scrolling along Fox News, is saying that the reason they couldn't determine this, let me get some light on the subject there. Weird looking flesh. There's a bump I've got on my arm. You can see it right there. That's from a spider bite from like 12 years ago. It's amazing. I had like one of those holes in there. It was probably a brown recluse, but it's like when I lost weight and leaned out, that bump, you could still see it. I'm like, what the hell is that? Then I remembered. It's like aliens planting seed pods in my brain or my body. Aliens. Exciting thought. Anyway, yeah, so here's their spin. They come out and they say, the reason we couldn't monitor it is we don't have permission to conduct surveillance. Excuse me? They're running and watching networks, but they don't have permission to conduct surveillance. What exactly did they have permission to do? Or is that really a way of saying we need more surveillance on everything? Sounds to me like that's what they're saying. So that's number one. Number two, well, those are those 2 points. What was the other brilliant thing they said on Fox News? I don't know. It was pretty disgusting. They're really, oh yeah. So Trump gets on the phone and he has a call with Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia. And he says, look, we really need these votes. We only need like 11,789. You know, can't you recalculate this and say it was recalculated? And the guy's saying, no, it was properly calculated. But this phone call gets recorded and released. Now, who did that? The Secretary of State or somebody within the White House? Evidently, it is on the Washington Post website for the full phone call. But I think Trump takes the position that the Republican Party is supposed to be unified and they're working towards the benefit of Republicans. I don't think it's dawned on him that that's not the case, that there are corruption, shall we call them, rhinos um, and disingenuous parties in both parties. But maybe he does know. Maybe he's pretending he doesn't know. Unbelievable. All right, so let's quickly review. Did we get a chance to listen to the excellent show from, what's her name, Ann Vandersteel? And on Steel Truth with Lynn Wood. There's a bunch of interesting stuff in there, and I heard the whole interview with Lynn Wood. I caught that show after I had done my broadcast earlier, and the problem was it was just towards the end of Lynn Wood's testimony. He says some pretty outrageous things, and he's been saying more outrageous things in tweets. The bottom line is, these are allegations, and people make the point, well, why would he say it? He's risking his career, his credibility. Well, that's true, perhaps. Maybe he can prove it. Maybe he can't. Is he looking to get somebody to sue him? Is he looking to have grievances filed, have his license attacked? I mean, Sydney said that her license has been challenged, there's been grievances filed, etc. I don't know if you listened to that interview. There was also a long one of her in the last show. I put the link in Hillsborough College, talking about her book, not the one that's called License to Lie. What's it called? Conviction Machine or something like that. But that's an excellent discussion, and I urge you to listen to it. I am listening to longer shows and interviews lately, and it's taking more time, something which appears to be at a premium these days. Now, our title this evening says, Appeal Denied. And why? And which one is he referring to? Oh, wondrous FJ. Yeah, we're referring to Gohmert's appeal of the dismissal against Pence. That case. That appeal in the Fifth Circuit Court in Texas was denied. Now, the first link is not speaking to that. The first link is him talking about the dismissal. This is before the appeal is denied. The appeal was denied today. Sunday, I believe. Excuse me. Now, if we scroll down the list, and I put numbers in here for you, number nine, the Beatles' White Album. Appeals Court dismisses Gohmert's lawsuit against Pence. That's the Epoch Times giving you the quick nugget. Basically, it's really without opinion. It's pretty much, we agree with the lower court. So ordered, one of those deals. But that does procedurally allow them to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I got to adjust here. As we have discussed, they sued Pence. There is no case or controversy. There is no problem with Pence unless the allegation is made and or this is changed to say we need an injunction against him, preventing him from following the statute called I always get this screwed up on the tape. It's called the Electoral Counting Act from 1877 because it's unconstitutional and usurps his authority as created by the Constitution, the 12th Amendment. Now, if they're not getting an injunction against him, saying he can't follow it, we need you to prohibit him from doing that, there's no case of controversy. Now, why Gohmert doesn't understand that and why Sydney doesn't understand that is beyond me. Unless they said that and I missed it and nobody's making that argument, hey, Judge, you've got to order and prevent him from doing this. All right, that's that. Now, my read on what needs to go down on the 6th. So our second link is Ted Cruz leads a demand to delay the certification, and Republican senators push to delay certification. This is from, and this is great because I got two of them. One, the first one, number 2, is from CNBC. The number 3 is from the Epoch Times. And also, you have the link to download the app, and I recommend you do it because this is a lot of material, tough to keep up with. You'll like it. Just scroll through. pop the ones you want. But what my point here is the difference between Cruz and, well, not Cruz, but CNBC and Epoch Times. CNBC, read the first 3 paragraphs, which are basically one sentence, and they say, even though no evidence, their accusation that there was election fraud, they have produced no evidence of it. That's their standard quote. And multiple cases, I think they said 50 cases, have been dismissed, but they are still dabbling in the foibles of this ridiculous argument, right? None of those cases have been heard on the merits. None of those cases have had evidence, or shall we call it an evidentiary hearing, okay? None. But what I think should happen, but that's why you want to see just the way they present it. It's the same story, right? So you can see we've got it narrowed down to 2 pages exactly, so plenty of links for you, but they're short ones. And a little off point for your general knowledge expansion, which I'm sure you will enjoy. But just notice the difference in the spin. Epoch Times isn't saying they're baseless and that there's no evidence, right? So that's the same story, though. All right, next. What should happen, in my opinion, is the bottom line is you've got 11, and now there's 12 senators. They're joining Josh Hawley out of Missouri, and they're going to object to the Electoral College votes. Okay, good. So now you're going to have a ton of Republican congressmen and women, object, and now you're going to have 12 senators object. All right. So we're going to get everybody's attention, right? Good. What they are proposing is to have a 10-day period, have a committee appointed that will do a commission to investigate this forthwith within the next 10 days that will still be done in time for the inauguration. Now, I don't know if they're going to vote on the Electoral College certification yet, or are they going to wait to the results of the committee? It sounds like it's a loosely knit thing, a developing story, campers. All right? Unreal. But it's an interesting thought. And okay, so let's extrapolate. What happens if they say, no, we're not going to do that? Okay, so they object. Now, as I understand the rules, when there's an objection, even one senator, one congressman, then it has to go to the House for a hearing on the objection, on whether or not those votes should be accepted or not. Now, there will be up to 2 hours allowed for debate. And I guess that's going to be per issue. And since we're going to have 5 states, or there's 6, at times 2 hours, up to, you're going to have 10 hours worth of debate. And Trump said he wants to put in a lot of evidence. Now, at the end of that debate, there will be a vote by the House to either sustain the objection or to not. At which point, if they say, no, we are not sustaining the objection, what happens? They're going to say, okay, nope, it's good. Now, does Pence, becomes the question, and this is where that 1877 Act comes in. Does Pence, is he then bound by that or not? That's a question. We don't know. The next question is, as I see it, here's the play, the Gordian knot play. Pence says, I'm not accepting these electoral votes from these states. I'm not accepting the Republican side. I'm not accepting the Democrat side. I'm not accepting them from 5 states. Now, according to the legal opinion that I gave you the link to the other day, and I suggested you read because it's very thorough and instructive, both on the Act and on the 12th Amendment and on the basis for the legal reasoning. Excellent opinion. It's worth a read. Educational. Big time. But, so there's 79, I believe, votes in play. Now, if you remove 79 votes, then neither of the candidates has a majority. Well, now, let's make sure we have proper audio. So that means it gets kicked back to the House of Representatives to elect the president. The Senate gets to elect the vice president. But the House only gets one vote per state. And it would appear it would be close. So you'll have 50 votes. The majority wins. Interesting. That's the way Pence could push this. Smash it through and say, look, these are out. Neither one has a majority. Go to the House, vote. Boom, there's the president. Now, they go to the Senate, and they have to vote as to the vice president. And I guess they each get a vote, or each state gets a vote. I don't know. Or is each senator? That's a different question. I don't know. Do you? If you do tell. Interesting stuff. But we'll assume, which is always dangerous, especially in these times, in this swamp, that because there is a Republican majority there, that they will vote for Pence as vice president, as opposed to Camilla as the vice president under President Trump. I saw her talking today. She's like a chucklehead. What's up? She's always laughing, the chucklehead, with a nice thick double chin. What am I missing? And it was one of these events that had nobody there, right, in a parking lot. All right. Here's another thought before we scroll through our stuff. Next issue is testosterone, talking about chucklehead. It's good stuff. And supplements for mental health. And then we're coming back to the horse shit. What was the point here? Wait a minute. Chucklehead. Oh, yeah. So Pelosi gets reelected as the Speaker of the House. And Kevin McCarthy as the, the ranking member. He hands her the gavel. And he's wearing a mask. They're doing public business wearing a mask. He comes up wearing a mask. I'm going to pick this up. What is it? It's a face diaper. Right? So, it strikes me as pretty obvious, and there's very minimal brain power required to see the symbolism, that they are stealing our democracy. They are stealing our rights. They are acting as bandits, and they are wearing masks while they do it. Public officials saying, stay at home, your business is closed, you cannot gather, you cannot have friends and family over for holidays. They're wearing masks while they're telling us that. Does that strike anybody as odd? Just wondering. All right, moving right along. Got to put this on, so we'll see what we can do. Oh, lovely. We can see it. Tip this up, and there we are. I'll have to put on my IQ shades to block the blinding light. All right, so number 4 was something that kind of scrolled through, and I realized something. While using this channel, my subscriptions on the other channel, I probably got 200 subs, to different channels. So my data feed there is totally different than what I have here, which is interesting. And it's weird because if I log out of this and I log back into YouTube, then I could go there. So in theory, I could go there and read my suggested, the home, the subscription pages, take my notes, build my little notepad, come back over here and say, well now. But I've got some interesting stuff coming up. On this, we have testosterone boosting for men. This is a talk, short, little YouTube channel, by a female, what is she, a urologist. Yeah, very interesting. She's talking about the different types of foods and things that boost testosterone. I thought it was intriguing, and we might like it. So take a look. That's number 4. Number 5 is fascinating. This is supplements for mental health. This is a channel, when I was looking for Pam Popper, because um, I wasn't subscribed to her on this channel, which is why I mentioned that. I found another thing that is one of her seminars that she does. And this is a discussion on that seminar, and this was just put up. This is great stuff. This is the real deal. This is not Pam playing activist girl. This is Pam playing Dr. Pam, running this operation, which is real holistic health. Good stuff. Supplements for mental health. Long and short, vitamin B's, B3, B6, B12. B3 is niacin. Magnesium. And I remember hearing years ago on the People's Pharmacy, which I follow, or used to religiously, every Saturday it was on NPR. It was like why I loved NPR, because it was broadcast out of Chapel Hill, and I would sit up at like 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning and listen to it. That was my thing. And they had great guests and great consciousness. But there was a woman there, a doctor from Arizona, I believe, I want to say Naomi, but it's not, Low Dog. And very interesting. And she was the head of, again, holistic medicine at University of Arizona. Top shelf, very well informed. But she made the point about vitamin B6 were deficient. Americans were deficient. And the number, this is wild, and the number of people who were deficient equaled the number of people who were taking antidepressant medication. I mean, it was within 1 percentage point. It was incredible. And that B6 reduces depression, which is what they're talking about here. So fascinating. And I read a report and a study that was done back in the 50s that said niacin B3 cured schizophrenia. And that quickly got buried because they had to come up with other drugs that are more expensive and experimental. Niacin. Now niacin, I think if you take more than 200 milligrams, you get like a major burning tingling in your external nervous system till you build up some kind of a resistance to it. So that report that I read, this kid was dosed with massive amounts of niacin, and he basically kind of went back to sleep, or not in a coma, but he like passed out, and he woke up, he slept for, I guess, ridiculous 20 hours or something, and then he was cured. He was back to normal. So it must have fried his nerve synapses back into place. It was fascinating. And then that whole line of reasoning disappeared. Imagine that. All right, so that's number 5. Number 6 is cute. Short clip from Newsmax. Biden can't pop the confetti. That's my thing. Him and his lovely doctor wife on New Year's Eve, and she's trying to pop the little confetti thing, and it wouldn't work. What is that telling you? Could be symbolic on 2 levels. But she was trying to pop the confetti, not him. Anyway, supplements for mental health, Newsmax. Now, number 7. This is huge. Somebody sent me this in an email, and I read this. And I've had discussions about this with Chris out in California, ex-military, computer head. He's the guy who was doing the chit-chat with Cottrell about the IP addresses. And, I picked up the phone. I called him. I said, so, you want to do a thing on the live or what? I said, bottom line, is this showing us as a server there, or is this just a domain name server? He said, it's just a domain name server. I said, okay. So does this prove anything? He said, no. He said, but I told him to look at it and figure it out. And, I'm like, okay, so did we figure it out? He said, yeah. I said, okay, cool. But he had sent me some interesting information a couple of years ago on the Strong Cities Network and the initiative. Now, take a look at this. This is a must-read. This is like the diamond in this pile of shit. And it's terrifying. Number 7, Strong Cities Network, okay? This is from unitynewsnetwork.co.uk. Strong Cities Network, a global police force controlled by the United Nations. Now, the question, these are cities here and in other places, but here meaning America. So the simple question we have is, any mayor, governor, city councilman like those clowns in Chicago who support this, encourage this, and they also address that business in Utah, and that would be Mitt Romney country, right? Where they had taken over a convention center and they declared that that is UN property, really. And it's like a foreign country, and that's where they, I guess this is where those autonomous zones come in. Remember that? Well, the question then, simple, clear, blindingly clear, one voice rise above the din is, does that comply with our Constitution? To have a foreign group be a police force or a police force controlled by a foreign group. Anybody who supports that seems to have just blatantly violated their oath to support the Constitution. Uphold, protect, and defend. Does that make them traitors? Yes, it does. However, by statutory definition, which we'll have to say is the hyper-technified codification of laws and statutes that may not be picking up the self-preservation notion of the Constitution, we'll call it the Talmudification of our legal system, doesn't authorize by statute, because that's it. If there's no rule against it, we'll have to go ask Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who will instruct the police chief. The rules say, the rules. Do you remember? How many times did she say the rules? There's a reason I'm coming to this. Now, the rules are designed to get around, aren't they? And that's why they have lawyers. So you should get around them. How do you get around it? Wasn't that what the Wisconsin or Michigan governor said? Well, we'll get around it. We have ways around that after the court ordered her and declared her actions violated the law and shouldn't stand. Well, we'll get around it. Now, what about upholding the oath of upholding the Constitution, honoring the oath? And when there's a breach of that oath, where's the definition of treason? I want to know. Now, on this direct point, I think Patrick Byrne has been making some very strong assertions. Lynn Wood has been making equally strong assertions. If you haven't listened to Vandersteel's interview with him, you should, because he's talking about how firing squads are authorized and how persuasive being offered to be taken out and shot in a firing squad will encourage people to disclose their information. Perhaps. But what are the grounds of treason? Treason has to be a declared war by Congress and aiding and supporting the enemy. Isn't that treason? Absent that, you don't have a statutory violation. That's why I went through the gymnastic permutations of establishing treason by the mayor in Portland, because you have Antifa declaring war on the United States and acting in furtherance of it by throwing and burning federal buildings to see the destruction of the U.S. can be construed as an act of war. By supporting Antifa, you are supporting an enemy of war. Now, granted, Congress hasn't declared a war, but it certainly pushes it to that same line of reasoning. You are supporting, if you are supporting, somebody who is attacking and declaring war on the U.S., are you not a traitor? Maybe even under the statutory definition. An interesting thought. Why do you think the founders put that all public officers shall take an oath of office where they swear to uphold, protect, and defend our Constitution. They put that in the Constitution. There's a reason for it. It's called boundaries, strong boundaries. Now, that doesn't mean you let a foreign nation come in and be the police force. You're going to have the police force swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. When you have the World Health Organization or even the United Nations in any way, shape, or form dictate policy for us, is that complying with the oath to uphold, protect, and defend? I would argue that by allowing them in, encouraging it, proposing it, suggesting it as a public official is violating your oath to have somebody who hasn't taken that oath come in and infiltrate. By having the World Health Organization dictate policy, they haven't taken an oath. We should not be allowed to follow policy by anybody who hasn't taken an oath. And these fools in Congress and Senate and in the courts and in the executive branch, Justice Department, FBI, who do not honor that oath need to be removed forthwith. Okay? Listen to Lynn Wood on Vandersteels in the last show. The links are in the show notes there. My point on this was Patrick Byrne was saying and is talking about this. And I said Lynn Wood said it, but he needs to be told this. And if y'all can tweet it, please do. That the oath to uphold the Constitution, violating the oath, is treason. That's what they need to be looked at. All of this stuff, the obstruction of justice, the aiding and abetting, the accessory after the fact, the destruction of evidence, shredding of hundreds of thousands of ballots, whether they're fake ballots, whether they're real ballots. How does that not get prosecuted? The failure to prosecute becomes the obstruction of justice. The failure to prosecute becomes accessories after the fact. Or is it a direct co-conspirator? Right? Are they actually part of the conspiracy? It's pretty clear in my mind. So this is number 7. And they're talking about the Utah thing and the strong cities. Now, you need to take a look at this because Webb had been discussing this a year ago, well, not even 6 months ago, about that's the play with the Antifa attacks to try and get the UN in. The UN is having a hearing of the racial components here. And what was the thing that they called it? The human rights thing. And China sits on the Human Rights Commission. Really? So the absurdity with the inmates running the institution is getting more ludicrous by the day. So they're going to tell us about our human rights violations, our racial, what are they calling it, prejudice, and police misconduct. Let's go look at the UN. Let's go look at what helmets are they? The white helmets over there in Iraq. There's a great movie called Whistleblower. Rachel Weisz is in it. And it's a true story. And she was a cop in Portland and signs up to do UN peacekeeping work in Bosnia and finds out that women and young girls are being captured, kidnapped, and smuggled and trafficked into prostitution rings, that the UN was directly involved. The U.S. State Department was directly involved, and the military was directly involved. And hearings were had, and they were found to be directly involved, and nothing came of it. We got a movie. But the UN is going to tell us about how to police ourselves. They should be removed from our soil. And in my opinion, that whole piece of satanic ground should be torn out. There's some interesting, shall we call it, sculpture in that place. That Amazing Polly did a very interesting piece on. Not to mention Rockefeller's place down in, is it in Jekyll Island? That the conference room is right over the sacrificial altar where the Native Americans did that, and he built that right over there. There's a very interesting, energetic component to this crew. Wasn't that land in New York donated by Rockefeller? Interesting. Not good, but interesting. All right, what number? That was number 7. Number 8 is some good news that I figure we better bring forward. What is this? Huawei? Is that how we pronounce them? They are being limited with their 5G network access. This is very cool. This is out of the Epoch Times, and this is from December 30th, so a couple of days ago. Evidently, now it was a couple of days ago when I read this here. What does it say? The U.S. turns tide on Huawei ending CCP's 5G master plan. What they're doing is requiring clean networks and not allowing Huawei components in there. And there are multiple countries around the world, in particular NATO, doing it. So it's putting a kibosh on their expansion and spyability factors using 5G networks into military communications. It's a good little article. I think you'll enjoy that. Trump and Pompeo got that done. Okay, good. I wonder what Krebs thought of that, our CISA champion who was keeping our election secure, as well as our military communications and networks, and they were told to shut down everything because of the breach. Now, I got to think of our man Brendan O'Connell. You remember Brendan? Has anybody been paying attention to him? But before we got that, we have number 9. And that's the actual blurb from Epoch Times where they're dismissing Gohmert's lawsuit and they discuss it. This is on the appellate level. They dismissed the appeal or denied it, right? So you had the trial court dismissed, the lack of standing, and then you have the appellate court denies the appeal because they agree with the lower court. This opens the way for them to proceed to the U.S. Supreme Court. For what purpose? To have a hearing by Wednesday in order to do what? To say Pence, to just declare that this thing is unconstitutional? I don't know. If they make the allegation that Pence should be enjoined from using it and following those rules, that would be an intelligent win, in my opinion. But I doubt it's going to happen. Number 10 is Brendan O'Connell. There's a couple of episodes here, and he's got links to his backup channel, so he's finally up on Brighteon and on, what's the other one? BitChute. This one is called Should the U.S. Invade Israel? This is interesting. His tone is a bit, I found it a bit irritating, but I kept listening to it. I kept stopping, going back and forth. And basically, I want to say at the 27-minute mark, and it's about, is it 27? So I think it's about there's 12 more minutes left after that. Because he keeps saying, okay, and that's the end. And then he gets onto a roll, kind of like some of our friends do here and say, okay, bye. Oh, wait, I remembered, right? So he gets into a roll, and he discusses in here a few things. One of the things is he's talking about how the fact that Trump did nothing about a lot of things. And I agree. And what is a troubling thing is the business of Lynn Wood says in the interview to Vandersteel that Trump has the authority to appoint a prosecutor to examine this whole situation. And Lynn Wood says, yes, anything coming out of the Justice Department stems from the executive branch. So that's Trump. So he has the authority to do that. Now, it may not be a special prosecutor, but it could certainly be a prosecutor. And this could have been done for the last several years for various other things. Why hasn't it? Well, if what they were saying the other day about Sidney not being able to get in the White House and Trump's attorneys trying to bully him and trying to get him to concede and walk away, and if that's the kind of advice he's getting, it might be very conceivable that that is what he was denied, that information. But it seemed to me he should know better. Anyway, Brendan makes some very good points, and he goes through this business with, and I forgot what time mark it was, with Pechenik, where Pechenik calls the Constitution. He says, I'm not an aficionado in the Constitution, whatever that means. An aficionado. It means he smokes cigars, isn't it? Aficionados are. But he says it's outdated. Well, if you're not an aficionado, how do you know it's outdated? What are you basing that on? That's my question. The next point, though, more interesting, is Brendan finds a clip from earlier where Pechenik is talking to the kid, and I forgot the kid's name, who grew a beard, right? And on Alex Jones' show. And Pechenik is explaining how the intelligence agencies in the military got together and installed him and they're controlling everything for their own agenda. It sounds pretty nefarious to me. So that, I don't remember where that was, but if you jump in at the 27-minute mark, is interesting. I think you got about 12, maybe 15 minutes after that. But you could catch the whole thing. I don't know. There's some interesting stuff in there. And the one before that is, I just started it. It's a short one on the list on this channel there, on his YouTube channel. If it's still there, I grabbed this last night, where he's still going after Whitney Webb. And he makes the point about Mint Press. And what's the guy's name? Hopsicker down in, across in Sarasota. And how George Webb was there. And that George was talking to Hopsicker, and Hopsicker had a book exposing things, and it was also published on Mint Press, which is where Whitney was working for, and somehow Hopsicker's book or something gets disappeared from Mint Press, and now it's removed. It's interesting, curious. Brendan thinks there are foul play afoot. Interesting perspective, though, for sure. All right, number 11. That's number 10. Number 11. This is, and I found 2 points on this. This is the article. Where the hell is it? Oh, wait, it looks like I may have screwed up and not gotten the article in there, which is all right, because the next one is the NTD covers and reads the article of Israeli deaths after using the Pfizer vaccine, right? They're using the Pfizer vaccine in Israel. They're doing a major, what are we calling this? Not a vaccination, but we're calling it an inoculation campaign, okay? 4 people died, 240 got COVID-19 after being injected with the Pfizer Experimental mRNA vaccine. Number 12 is the NTD, which is, I guess, part of Epoch Times, and it's one of their YouTube channels. This is excellent. This is an excellent piece. This is a 15-minute piece. They cover a lot of stuff effectively on the Israeli deaths. They read the article to you, so grab it there. And then they discuss California's lockdown. And this is mind-blowing, that California is trying to insert into their educational system the critical race theory, which they have in schools. And they have a couple of teachers talking about it and explaining that one is the oppressor, one is the oppressed, one is the villain, one is the victim. And they're putting all the white children as the villains and all others as victims and oppressed. So it's really pushing to create Marxist training, and it's the same thing, disparity, divisiveness, and a race war. And this is what, what's his face wants to do? What do we call him? Gruesome Newsom? Yeah. Didn't he just recently announce that there's going to be lockdowns until further notice? Like, what the hell, man? And where's Larry Klayman in that lawsuit for the emergency injunction where he's representing Dr. Judy? Right? Interesting. So that's what I've got for you. And then I have the PayPal and the Patreon, and I thank a couple of people. A shout out to Carl. I'll shoot you a note in a little bit. I got your support, and I appreciate it. And there was another point I wanted to hit, unrelated to that. California thing, the lockdowns. Not bad for no notes, but I'm going to have to leave it there. It's late, getting sweepy. All right, campers, thanks for tuning in. And check these links. You really need to read this. It's a short article on the Strong Cities Network that are installed all over our country, and who put them there, and who thinks that that supports the Constitution. How come it hasn't been prosecuted? How come our goddamn representatives are not thinking and speaking in terms of upholding, protecting, and defending the Constitution when these outrageous, and even the two idiots on Fox and these two Republicans running in Georgia, they're not saying, well, these are socialists. Are they saying socialism, what they're proposing, violates our Constitution? No, they're not saying it. Has the Constitution become nothing more than lip service? It certainly seems, excuse me, it certainly seems that it has. And my point to you is, if we can encourage Patrick Byrne to pick up on that notion, we might be able to get that out. And Lynn Wood, and Sidney Powell, and a few others. Now, I saw a comment by Carl in the last video just before I came on. It was saying that somebody had tweeted Smith modernization, and it was retweeted 1,200 times, and it was being sent to Trump, etc., Lynn Wood, and Sidney Powell. Oh, good. Now might be the right time for us to all begin screaming about Smith modernization, how it destroys the First Amendment, because it is now state-sponsored media, which means it is not a free press. Should be abolished. It is unconstitutional on its face. The people that supported and voted and signed that into law should be prosecuted for breaching their oath. And this is the crap they pulled. I remembered the last thing. And it's in the Epoch's Time. I haven't even read the article, but there's evidently they want to make the rules in the House. Nancy, the rules to say and abolish the terms, for gender consciousness. Male, female, his, hers, he, she. I mean, really? Why? So how are you going to have a discussion, an open floor debate, if you're not allowed to do that? So they're redefining the English language there to comply with what George Soros's kind of left-wing open society, open bullshit everything, or what? That's crazy. So I can't imagine if they do that rule, and we're going to have the debate on whether or not the elections were valid, and they're going to hear evidence. And people are going to have to change their gender verbiage to comply with the demented rule of the House. Interesting. If you like the thinking, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. The Strong Cities is number 7, and number 9 is the appeal court decision dismissing Gohmert's appeal. Interesting stuff. All right, campers, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to go space out. It's late. We'll see you soon. Bye for now. Thank you.